I'ma do what makes my city and my state happy. And that's why I came back. I love you. I'm back.
When he goes off, everybody goes to Twitter and says, you've got to watch the Warriors. He's gone off.
The next day, there are more Steph Curry clips going around in the days that he goes off than any player in the NBA.
So I want to reiterate my position on young Andrew Wiggins. Nothing personal against him. I don't believe he'll ever turn into an NBA superstar.
It's June 7th, 2015, and LeBron James has returned to Cleveland and brought them to their second ever NBA Finals in franchise history. They're currently down 1-0 to the young up-and-coming Golden State Warriors, who are led by a relatively unknown Steph Curry, who is making threes at an unprecedented level. All LeBron James has to do to secure the win and tie the series is make at least one of two free throws. The first one goes up, it rims out 0 for 1. The next one, though, is perfect. A Steph Curry turnover later, followed by a LeBron James spike, and the series was tied. But just because the Cavaliers had the momentum didn't mean the series was secure. But you might be wondering, how did the NBA get to this point to begin with? I mean, at this exact point the year prior, LeBron James was in the NBA Finals, but he was donning a Miami Heat uniform. And during the first time he left the Cleveland Cavaliers, fans figured that he was going to retire a member of the Miami Heat. Well, today we're bringing one of our most ambitious projects to date, what the NBA looked like 10 years ago. So make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications if you want to see more content like this. And now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. PrizePicks' new feature has been making us so much money. We've been having a lot of success on PrizePicks, and now they finally launched live squares, meaning that squares will update in real time on the app in the middle of a game. So if you see a player is being locked up on defense, you can take a lower square. Or if a player is on track for a generational game, you can take his higher square in the middle of the game. If you haven't signed up for PrizePicks, make sure you use my promo code microphone to get $50 when you make a $5 play to take advantage of this brand new feature. We've been dominating with our NBA and NFL picks, and I post them for free on my Instagram at TheFlightMike and Snapchat FlightMikeSnap. And thank you, PrizePicks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The 2014 to 2015 NBA season wasn't just any regular season. A contender season got derailed because an NYPD officer broke one of their stars' leg. Not one but two owners were forced to sell their teams because of some outrageous racist emails. One certain infamous point guard revolutionized how basketball was played forever, and we saw the end of a dynasty and the rise of another. The process had just began in Philadelphia. The Charlotte Hornets had played their first game in 12 years, and oh yeah, this happened.
LeBron James picks Cleveland. The decision made, the explanation simple enough. There it is. James' Instagram post, I'm coming home.
LeBron James had come home to Cleveland after a 4-year stint in Miami, but the decision was never as simple as many made it out to be. Many people were recruiting LeBron, and rightfully so. The best basketball player on the planet was a free agent in the middle of his prime, and he already had a reputation of liking to hop ship and join greener pastures. But nobody recruited as publicly as the 76ers' brand new rookie, Joel Embiid, who went on a Twitter rant in an attempt to get LeBron James on the Philadelphia 76ers, even asking people if what he was doing was against the CBA. But honestly, Embiid made a good argument. The 76ers were knee-deep in the process by general manager Sam Hinkie, which was a plan to tank now in order to get a high draft position to build a competitive roster. Man, that guy Sam Hinkie was smart and ahead of his time. Surely the Philadelphia 76ers wouldn't let him go, and I am confident that the draft picks that they end up getting from this tank is going to be well worth it. But despite Joel Embiid's best efforts, in the end, LeBron James wanted to go home, but this made things very uncomfortable outside of Cleveland. You see, just a few months prior to signing LeBron James, the Cleveland Cavaliers had the first overall pick for the second year in a row and chose to do this.
With the first pick in the 2014 NBA Draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Andrew Wiggins.
Now, this was the perfect setup for Cleveland, as now they could combine their young up-and-coming forward with their already established superstar in Kyrie Irving. But when LeBron James chose to come back to Cleveland, everybody was thrilled, except of course for Andrew Wiggins. Soon after, Wiggins was shipped off as the main piece in a trade with the Minnesota Timberwolves in order to acquire Kevin Love. Who is the other young superstar in this trade? Well, none other than Anthony Bennett, another former Canada prospect the Cavs took a year prior, who let's just say didn't have the best rookie years, so a change of scenery might do him some good. But Cleveland was set. Sure, they traded off their last 2 first overall picks, but they had a real competitive team, consisting of a big 3 of LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love. But just because Cleveland had the best player on the planet didn't mean they were the hands-down favorite to win the East. The Chicago Bulls had potential of their own. Sure, Derrick Rose was still not the same after his injury, but he was a solid third option for a young blossoming duo of Jimmy Butler and Pau Gasol. Plus, Joakim Noah was coming off of a Defensive Player of the Year level season. This team was built to win a 7-game series. But apart from the Bulls or Cavs, there was still the LeBron-less Miami Heat, who despite losing LeBron James, still had Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, in addition to one of the best front offices in the league, with Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra leading the charge. But that about covers the favorites to win the East. Over in the Western Conference, there was a clear favorite, the reigning defending NBA champion San Antonio Spurs, who are easily the deepest team in the entire league. Featuring the big 3 of Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, and Manu Ginobili, but now Kawhi Leonard, the draft pick that they traded for during the 2011 NBA draft, was starting to take a bigger role in the offense and on the defense. But there are still questions about the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, yeah, they were defending NBA champions, but they were also getting old. Their dynasty couldn't possibly last forever, and Father Time is undefeated. So maybe instead of the old team, you go with the complete opposite. The young up-and-coming Golden State Warriors had the most exciting backcourt in the NBA, and they were dominating in a fashion that we've never seen before, featuring the Splash Brothers in Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, in addition to Draymond Green and Harrison Barnes. The Golden State Warriors decided to completely shake things up during the offseason by letting go of their former head coach Mark Jackson and hiring former Suns general manager Steve Kerr, who took the Golden State Warriors job over the New York Knicks job that his former head coach Phil Jackson wanted him to take. But don't worry, Phil Jackson would find another one of his former players to become the brand new head coach of the New York Knicks, and that former player was Derek Fisher. Would Derek Fisher finally be the head coach to lead Carmelo Anthony and the New York Knicks to the top of the Eastern Conference? Meanwhile, the Houston Rockets were led by one of the most promising 1-2 punches in the NBA, James Harden and Dwight Howard. These two were hailed as the next coming of Kobe and Shaq. But at the same time, there's a lot of competition in the West because the Oklahoma City Thunder had the league's defending MVP on their roster. Kevin Durant won the MVP award a year prior, and the Thunder were able to make it all the way to the Western Conference Finals last year, losing to the eventual NBA champion San Antonio Spurs. So would they be able to take the next leap forward this season and be the face of the Western Conference? How could I forget about the Lob City Los Angeles Clippers? Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan, and a little bit of shooting from JJ Redick, coached by one of the NBA's most prestigious head coaches, Doc Rivers. How could a core like this fail? But there was one team not listed here that wouldn't just win their conference, but dominate while doing so. But before the season even started, the league had to do some quick housekeeping as they forced Hawks owner Bruce Levinson and Clippers owner Donald Sterling to sell their shares of the Atlanta Hawks and the Los Angeles Clippers after it had been leaked that both owners said some incredibly racist things about their own team and their fans. What's interesting about this is months before Levinson was outed himself for his comments, Levinson said this on the air about Donald Sterling.
Donald Sterling, what he said, I'm his partner. I can't be partners with somebody who shares those views.
This is beyond ironic because this is coming from a guy who we later found out said that the Hawks were too black, which I honestly have no idea what that could even mean. Like, not only is that just insanely racist, but that comment doesn't really make much sense. Now, terrible owners aside, it was time to see how the upcoming NBA season would go, and I would be lying if I didn't say this is one of the most surprising seasons of NBA basketball we've ever seen. Let's take a look at the NBA standings at the end of November. Okay, Eastern Conference first. It looks like the Cavaliers are starting off slow. Look at DeMar DeRozan and the Toronto Raptors go. Best record in the Eastern Conference so far, and the Chicago Bulls look pretty solid so far as well. The Charlotte Bobcats are now the Charlotte Hornets, don't forget that. Now over to the Western Conference, and oh my god, the Portland Trailblazers, Golden State Warriors, and Memphis Grizzlies have the best record in the NBA. Okay, this is surprising for a few reasons. First off, the Oklahoma City Thunder are 5-12 after being the potential favorites to win the West, which is mainly due to the fact that Kevin Durant missed the entire first month of play with a fracture in his foot. But don't worry, Thunder fans, as he should be back in December. And secondly, the San Antonio Spurs, who sure were old and had a record of just 12-4, which sure is good, but at the time put them at just 5th in the West. As for the Warriors and Trailblazers, their record made sense. The Dubs had some young unknown kids like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson hitting an unprecedented amount of threes, which yeah, was impressive, but surely at some point they had to slow down. I mean, yeah, they both had won Player of the Week awards during this month, but nobody had ever hit the amount of threes they were hitting, and statistically, they were due for some regression. I mean, this is just unsustainable. As for the Portland Trailblazers, Damian Lillard has been proving more and more that he's been a star in the NBA, and he had the perfect co-star in the form of LaMarcus Aldridge. But the Memphis Grizzlies, how do the Grizzlies currently have the best record in the NBA? This makes absolutely no sense. Yeah, they had Marc Gasol, Zach Randolph, and Michael Conley, but they didn't have a true superstar. Okay, maybe this is just a small sample size. Maybe the Grizzlies are just having an anomalous start to their season, because there's no way Zebo's leading this team to the playoffs, right? Okay, moving on to the end of December, and the Memphis Grizzlies still have one of the best records in the entire NBA. Okay, I apologize, Memphis fans. I was not familiar with your game. It seems like the unlikely big three of Mike Conley, Zach Randolph, and Marc Gasol were a force to be reckoned with after all. Around the league, everything seemed similar. The younger Western Conference teams like the Blazers and the Warriors were overshadowing the old guard of the San Antonio Spurs, who finished December just 20-14. The Bulls and Raptors seemed competitive, and finally, the Cavaliers were starting to learn how to play with one another, finishing the month of December going 10-7. But wait a minute, what are those two teams in the Southeast Division doing? The Atlanta Hawks and the Washington Wizards each had one of the best records in the entire association. But how? Surely a 37-year-old Paul Pierce isn't helping the Wizards that much, right? Well, of course not, as the young dynamic duo of John Wall and Bradley Beal had finally started to break out, with John Wall even winning a Player of the Week award after averaging 18 points and 12 assists and nearly 4 stocks per game. As for the Hawks, well, they weren't really a star-driven team. Yeah, they had some notable names like Jeff Teague, Paul Millsap, Al Horford, and Kyle Korver, but nobody was really taking over the team like a true superstar would. Speaking of superstars, in this month, Kobe Bryant surpassed Michael Jordan as the NBA's 3rd all-time leading scorer. The end of 2014 was very different to the end of 2013. The Spurs were floundering compared to dominating. Kobe Bryant had broken another record, LeBron was back home, and the Atlanta Hawks were about to experience some of the most surprising success in franchise history. 17-0 is the record of, no, not Bron's Cavaliers, no, not Curry's Warriors, and no, not the Lob City Clippers. 17-0 is the record of the Atlanta Hawks in January of 2015. They were the best team in basketball. In that amazing streak, Al Horford won the Player of the Week honors after averaging 18 points, nearly 7 boards, 5 assists, and nearly 3 stocks per game. This was impressive for sure, but let's go over the Western Conference for a second and focus on the Oklahoma City Thunder, specifically Russell Westbrook. He had really stepped up with Kevin Durant missing stretches of time with injury, and he had been having his first ever Russell Westbrook-esque season, putting up triple-doubles basically weekly. But in the middle of this amazing season, where we should have been praising Westbrook's amazing performances, we were focused on something else.
Execution. That was a good job of executing. down the stretch, you and Serge seem to be in a really great rhythm. What allowed you guys to be so successful?
Did a good job execution.
He also had that first stretch Nick was talking about, the 15-2 run. We went with a small lineup with 5 really good offensive players on the court. What does it do for your offense when everybody out there is really accomplished as an offensive player?
It's good.
Russ, you had 8 assists in the fourth quarter. What did you see from them defensively that allowed you to focus as much as you did on passing the rock?
We did a good job executing.
Now, are you upset with something?
I just don't like you.
You don't?
No.
Do you not like Nick either?
I love Nick. But I don't like you.
This goes on for about 2 more minutes too. I guess Russell Westbrook just really liked executing. But in all seriousness, this was the beginning of Russell Westbrook's battle with the media that would follow him his entire career. But something else was beginning to arise in the West. And no, it wasn't a controversy. It was the Splash Brothers. At this point, everybody knew Steph Curry, who had quickly become the best point guard in the NBA and an MVP favorite. But what about his backcourt teammate Klay Thompson? Well, on January 23rd, Klay Thompson put everybody on notice, putting up an NBA record 37 points in just 1 quarter of play. In case you've never seen it with the crowd noise, I am begging you to please watch it. This has to be one of the greatest displays of shooting that I've ever seen.
If you're wondering what the NBA record is for most points in a quarter, you just watched it. George Gervin at 33 and a quarter. And Klay Thompson has 50 and 37 in a quarter. Klay Thompson, I'm going to repeat that, 37 in a quarter.
I mean, that is just unreal stuff. Sure, Atlanta had the best month by a team, even managing to win Player of the Month as a collective team. But Klay Thompson had the best month by a single player, winning Player of the Week twice and averaging, get this, 25 points per game on 49% from 3. 49%! Are you kidding me? Words cannot describe the insanity of that statistic. Want to know an even crazier statistic? James Harden had won back-to-back Player of the Month awards. And do you want to know why? Because since the start of December, James Harden had been averaging nearly 30 points per game on less than 20 shots per game, while putting up an additional 5 boards and 7 assists per game. Oh yeah, he also put his team in the 2nd seed of the Western Conference, only behind the Golden State Warriors. The first half of the season had come and gone, and the LeBron James-led Cavaliers were still struggling to find any consistency, with the team finishing January a mediocre 29-20. But then, something clicked. From January 15th to the All-Star break, the Cleveland Cavaliers went 14-2, being led by LeBron James, who was averaging 27 points, nearly 7 assists, 6 boards, and over 2 stocks per game, en route to his first Player of the Month award this season. The Cavs had quickly become Eastern Conference favorites in the span of 1 month, but they had one team in front of them that might give them trouble: the Atlanta Hawks, who by the All-Star break had an NBA best 43-11 record, while also leading the NBA in All-Stars, with Jeff Teague, Paul Millsap, Kyle Korver, and Al Horford all getting the nod. But while the NBA season was taking an All-Star break, I think it's time we take a short break and take a look at Andrew Wiggins and Anthony Bennett, who, if you remember, were traded to Minnesota in exchange for Kevin Love. Love continued to ball out as a stretch big in Cleveland, playing his role as a third option behind Kyrie Irving and LeBron James extremely well. But as for the former #1 overall pick duo, well, Andrew Wiggins was performing solid, putting up 15 points and 4.5 boards per game. But Anthony Bennett, I don't want to be rude, and I don't want to insult him as a player, but Anthony Bennett was downright terrible, bad, trash. Watching Anthony Bennett play basketball made you genuinely confused how this man was a #1 overall pick just a year ago. But to be fair to him, after the All-Star break, Bennett did suffer an injury that would limit him to just 4 games played in the last few months of the season, which sucks for him, but honestly, not giving Bennett minutes made the Timberwolves a better team. Okay, that's enough bus conversation, for now at least. Let's talk about the GOAT. GOAT. And no, I'm not talking about Kobe Bryant, who, by the way, after becoming the third all-time leading scorer like we had talked about prior, tore his rotator cuff back in January and had to miss the rest of the season. I'm talking about the GOAT of 2Ks, NBA 2K15. I can already hear it now. Why are you talking about a basketball video game while discussing a real NBA season? And that's a fair question, but first, let's establish some facts here. First off, during the mid-2010s, NBA 2K was by far and away the best sports video game available. Second off, the NBA, more than any other league in America, was the first to use digital media as a way to popularize and advertise their product. Third off, NBA 2K15 wasn't just one of the best 2Ks ever made, it gave rise to plenty of basketball creators, 2K creators, and even popular YouTubers and streamers as we know today. And I know some of these names will shock you. We got creators like Flight, Click Productions, Lost and Unbound, Jesser. You even saw yours truly making consistent NBA 2K15 content with this game. Also, with the rise of 2K15, the franchise got more popular, and in later years, extremely popular streamers like Aiden Ross, Agent Zero, Phantom, and even Speed all began their careers playing 2K. The cultural significance of NBA 2K cannot be downplayed whatsoever, and it isn't a stretch at all to say that many of the most popular content creators on the planet got their start pressing X or square to shoot a virtual ball into a virtual hoop. And NBA 2K15 might have been the most popular of them all. But back to real life basketball, because at the end of the day,
it's only a game.
The All-Star break came and went, with the West defeating the East 163-158, behind Russell Westbrook putting up the second most points ever by a single player with 41. Something he would have to get used to, since after playing just one game after the All-Star break, Kevin Durant would miss the rest of the season with a season-ending surgery. But to be fair to Westbrook, he took the ball and ran with it. Over the next 3 months, February, March, and April, Russell Westbrook won Player of the Month not once, not twice, but all 3 times. Fans were starting to question whether or not Russell Westbrook was good enough to have his own team. Not just that, but in February, we saw the first ever matchup between LeBron's Cavaliers and Curry's Warriors. This game was highlighted by one man and one man only, LeBron James. The King had a 42-point, 11-rebound double-double, leading the Cavs to a win over the Golden State Warriors, whose own superstar Steph Curry struggled, shooting just 29% from the field and scoring just 18 points. Just to put into perspective how much he struggled, Curry had more turnovers this game than threes made. Despite this loss, the Golden State Warriors had ballooned their lead over the NBA, as by the end of March, the team had an NBA best record of 61-13. Curry's rival LeBron James also continued his hot streak, as he was named the Player of the Month for not only February but March as well. In that 2-month span, LeBron averaged nearly 25 points, 6.5 rebounds, just over 7 assists, and over 2 stocks per game. With Steph Curry and Russell Westbrook being in the Western Conference, there was no competition for LeBron. He was without a doubt the best player in the Eastern Conference. That was until April came around. In April of 2015, DeMar DeRozan was hands down the best player in the East, winning the Player of the Month award, going off for 25 points and nearly 2 stocks per game. Granted, April was a small sample size for players, since they only played 6 or 7 games. This was before the playoffs, but he was still phenomenal, and it helped lead the Raptors to their best record in franchise history. I guess you could say the Raptors and DeMar DeRozan really broke a leg out there with their performance that season, right? Please don't unsubscribe. Okay, sorry, maybe that was really bad timing, because on April 8th, Hawks defensive specialist Thabo Sefolosha had his leg broken by NYPD officers in a case that he was eventually awarded over $4 million for, due to the fact that the NYPD had racially profiled him and committed police brutality. To be fair, there's no case where a person should get their leg broken by police if they're not resisting and following orders. And by all reports, Thabo had done just that, but still had his leg broken. This was huge because Thabo was a huge reason why the Hawks finished with the best record in the Eastern Conference that season. He was a defensive anchor playing alongside Al Horford, and without him, the Atlanta Hawks would be handicapped defensively for the playoffs. But with that, the season was officially over. The 2014 to 2015 NBA season season had many surprises, like the Warriors and Hawks finishing with the best record in their respective conferences, as well as some other less positive surprises, like, for instance, the Lakers and Knicks both reaching their first 60-loss seasons in franchise history. Steph Curry, for the first time in his career, would win league MVP. Kawhi Leonard broke out and won his first Defensive Player of the Year award. Andrew Wiggins won Rookie of the Year, playing solid, but not really living up to the generational tag many had placed on him. And it was relatively easy because the only competition he would have had was Jabari Parker, and he got injured only a few months into his rookie season. Lou Williams had won Sixth Man of the Year, just ahead of some point guard the Celtics had acquired mid-season named Isaiah Thomas. Anyways, that concluded the 2014-15 regular season. But now for what everybody had been waiting for, the playoffs. The first round of the playoffs were pretty one-sided for the most part. Every matchup was finished by Game 6, except for one series, the San Antonio Spurs versus the Lob City Clippers. I feel like this series wasn't just special for the moments it created, but also what it represented. The San Antonio Spurs were an aging dynasty who, to give them credit, were the defending NBA champions, but admittedly were fading with their age. They had won their titles based off of playing basketball the right way, defensively, as a team, and through effort, the Greg Popovich way, sharing the basketball, making the extra pass, and taking the open jumper, passing up a good shot for a great shot. But the Los Angeles Clippers, on the other hand, were the exact opposite. They were the epitome of highlight factory. They were in fact called Lob City for a reason. This matchup was basically the old championship pedigree way of playing basketball versus the new exciting way of playing basketball. And it took all of the 7-game series to find a winner, but ultimately it came down to Chris Paul. This was an insane shot, but it's not as insane as what's about to come next. The semifinal round had some of the best basketball you'll ever see. From Paul Pierce's famous "I called game" moment to this incredible 62-foot shot from Steph Curry, which immortalized him in basketball history.
No call that way. Curry flings it the other way, and he got it!
Or how could you forget Derrick Rose's buzzer beater to give the Bulls a 2-1 lead over the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Rose trying to get open, fires away. Bang! It's over! The Bulls win!
But that wasn't even the best game-winning buzzer beater that series. The next game, LeBron James must have had fire in his eyes, because this shot didn't just put the game away, it gave the Cavaliers momentum for the rest of the playoffs.
James for the win! It's gone!
This is by far one of the most unforgettable series in LeBron James's career, which is saying something because just a few weeks from now, we would be saying the exact same thing about him once again. After experiencing one of the best semifinal rounds in recent memory, we were unfortunately given one of the worst conference finals as well. James Harden and Dwight Howard were a force to be reckoned with, but the Splash Brothers managed to gentleman sweep the Rockets 4-1. As for the East, the LeBron James-led Cavaliers had pretty much done the same exact thing, except they were able to clean sweep the Hawks 4-0. Just to put into perspective how dominant each team had been, there were probably 2 close games combined in both of these series. For the Cavs, it was Game 3 where they needed a clutch LeBron James 3 to take the lead to eventually win the game.
Back to LeBron, fakes the 3, then shoots it in.
As for the Golden State Warriors, their closest game came in a Game 2 victory over Houston, where I don't know how else to describe it, but James Harden just absolutely panics and fumbles the ball to give Golden State the win.
Back to Harden tied up, knocked loose, picked up, and the game is over!
The stage was set, and LeBron James's first season back in the land. He had taken his hometown team back to the NBA playoffs, all the way to the NBA Finals. But in the West, Steph Curry had become a phenom. He was shooting threes like nobody thought was possible, and was changing the fabric of the sport of basketball. It was the old, established veteran versus the new up-and-coming star. Who would win? But before we begin the first ever NBA Finals meeting between the Golden State Warriors and Cleveland Cavaliers, it's important to note one thing, and that's the that the Cleveland Cavaliers were without star big man Kevin Love. Kevin Love had been injured against the Boston Celtics in the first round of the playoffs after a severe shoulder injury by Kelly Olynyk, meaning that the Cavaliers would be without one of their best shooters and rebounders. 1/3 of their big three was gone. The first game of the series between the two powerhouses was close, with the game ending 98-98 in regulation, which meant overtime was upon us. Golden State ran away with the game, scoring 10 points in overtime compared to just 2 for Cleveland. However, more important than the score was what happened in overtime. Kyrie Irving would suffer a knee injury which would keep him out of the rest of the NBA Finals. This meant that if LeBron James really wanted to bring a championship to Cleveland, he'd have to do it without his best 2 teammates. Game 2 was just as close, with the game ending in an 87-87 tie after 48 minutes of regulation, meaning overtime was needed again to decide the game. However, things would go much differently this time, with LeBron James hitting one of 2 game-ending free throws to win the game 95-93. Game 3 was a blowout for 3 quarters after Cleveland led the Dubs 72-55, managing to outscore them in the first 3 quarters of the game. However, a late fourth quarter surge by the Warriors consisting of 36 points finally made the contest competitive. But still, Cleveland hung on to win Game 3 96-91. LeBron James had somehow managed to lead the Cavaliers to a 2-1 lead over the Warriors without Kevin Love or Kyrie Irving after dropping back-to-back 40 bombs. But would it be enough to secure the series? Well, Game 4 was a blowout, just not for the Cavs. The Dubs destroyed the Cavaliers 103-82 as LeBron James started to show signs of fatigue, scoring just 20 points on 22 shot attempts. Game 5, LeBron James was back. He scored 40 once again, and the game was much closer, but it was still not enough to stop Curry's 7 threes, which propelled the Warriors to a 104-91 victory in Game 5. Game 6 was do or die for LeBron and the Cavaliers. Sure, they had 2 of their top 3 options out, but that was just an excuse. If they lose, the series is over, and the Warriors would win their first title in franchise history since 1975. If they win, they go back to Cleveland with the momentum for Game 7. The Cavaliers have done everything right. LeBron James had 32 points, 18 rebounds, and 9 assists. They held Steph Curry to 27% from 3 and 47% from the field. Klay Thompson had just 5 points the entire game. So what went wrong for Cleveland to lose this game 105-97?
With the game on the line, one shot, who would you rather have taking it, Iggy or Curry?
Of everyone on Golden State, open shot, fate of the universe on the line, or the Martians have the death beam pointed at Earth, you better hit it. I want Iguodala.
That's right, Andre Iguodala is what went wrong for the Cavaliers. He had 25 points, 4 boards, 5 assists, but more importantly, 0 turnovers in the deciding Game 6 over the Cleveland Cavaliers. For his efforts, he was awarded the Warriors Finals MVP award, and the franchise's first since 1975. Now listen, you can debate all you want about whether or not he or Curry deserved it, and honestly, I do think Steph Curry might have been robbed here. But what's more important is that the Golden State Warriors had done the unthinkable. Just 1 year ago, the Warriors were bounced out of the first round and had to hire Steve Kerr as a first-year head coach. 1 year later, Steph Curry is the first unanimous MVP in league history. The Warriors win 60+ games, and now they're holding the franchise's first Larry O'Brien trophy in 40 years. But not just that, in the same way kids would shout Kobe while shooting a piece of trash into the garbage, kids all around the world were now saying Curry. Steph Curry had completely changed the way basketball is played. A year ago, the San Antonio Spurs had won the title, a team that plays defense, takes high percentage shots, and isn't built around one star. But now, one of the most star-driven, unorthodox for-the-time teams had won the championship just 365 days later. If that isn't symbolism, I don't know what is. Of course, as we know, the Warriors and the Cavaliers would embark on a now legendary rivalry in the finals for years to come. But this is what started it all. We forget a lot of things during a season that is 82 games long, but the 2014 to 2015 NBA season isn't just one of them. It was simply unforgettable.